Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, brothers, sisters, and friends, and a very special assalamu alaikum to Brother Firdaus. Bro, there's a timer in the corner, man. That's like a countdown to tell you when we're gonna start. So yeah, jazakallah khairan for for joining. Oh man, you're getting proper into the emotes from Ustad Yusha, man. Those are some sweet emotes. I gotta get those sorted as well. Yeah, so Jazakallah khairan for joining. Inshallah, hopefully you guys have caught up with the previous sessions, which are all up on YouTube, along with the notes and whatnot. Today, hopefully, shouldn't be as long as some of the previous sessions because it's a fairly simple open and cut case. So we're just going to go through a lot of examples. So today we're going to be discussing, inshallah, the proof of the prophethood of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the messenger of God. So let's get straight into it, inshallah. Okay. Right. Okay. So moving on the same theme as the previous sessions, we're going to be going through a form of a deductive argument in this case. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So in this case, let's start off our premises by asserting that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam claimed to be the messenger of God. Okay, that there is an active claim there. Actually, there was no. Okay, I was gonna say there was another question I was supposed to ask, but it's not here on this slide. Right. Okay. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam actively claimed to be the messenger of God. This is recorded in the Quran, as we see from the ayah that's listed there, as well as in many of the hadith, the authenticated narrations from people that were there. So, in terms of this claim, there is no ambiguity here. I mean, at the end of the day, the Muslims around the world refer to him as the messenger of God or a prophet of God. So, in terms of this claim, there is no ambiguity or confusion there. The claim is 100% definitely there, and it is attributed and ascribed to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the sense that he is the one making the claim. This is not a claim that other people are superimposing onto him. For example, in another ideology, people will claim that the messenger was actually of a divine origin themselves and whatever have you. It's just something that the messenger never claimed. So here, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is actively claiming that he is the messenger of God. Okay, as well as obviously, the people around him affirming that. So now in this statement, yeah, we're going to go a little bit more than that. Yeah. So in this statement, there's only two scenarios, right? By the way, before I go into this argument, I do want to also caveat that this is not my ultimate favorite argument for Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There is a much more powerful and nuanced one there. The problem with this one is that it requires entertainment of ulterior motives of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is not obviously the best in terms of etiquette. It's only done to explore, like I said, the full range of options in order to make sure that our deductive argument is actually watertight, that we've done everything. There is another argument out there that doesn't necessarily rely on this that I would prefer, but unfortunately, it's a little bit more complicated to go through. I haven't really got the slides and everything like that ready. So this, in terms of bang for your buck, this is the best one in that regard, because it's a lot simpler to understand and to remember all the steps and the points concerned. Okay, so now with regards to this claim, there's only two possibilities, right? Just think about it. Either the claim is true or it's not true. It can't be partially true. You can't be partially a messenger of God. I'm the messenger of God on Mondays to Friday, but on the weekend, I take the day off. No, you're either the messenger of God, and it's once you've been appointed as a messenger of God, it's that that's your role for the rest of your life. Or you're not. There's no in betweens. So either the claim is true or the claim is false. There is no in between here. So that's why we can explore both options. And what will further divide as well is when the claim is false. Well, we also need to consider, well, okay, fine. If the claim is false, yet Prophet Muhammad SAW is making the claim, did he know the claim was false? Which means that he was actively trying to mislead the people. Or was he unaware that the claim was false, which means that there was some, and this is, you see, this is what, why this is not the best in terms of etiquette, but the claim is that there was some mental deficiency there. So this is what, Orientalists and people who deny the messengership of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam would claim, is that either he is a liar, that he actively tried to mislead the people, or to try and appease the Muslims, or because they can't support it, they'll say, well, no, 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 he wasn't actively lying, because that implies an intention, but rather, he was deluded into thinking that he was the messenger of God. So just to put it basically into a chart format, you either he was an imposter, right? So he wasn't a truthful and authentic messenger of God, in which case he was either sincere. Now, what we're going to be discussing here is, I want you guys to think about this for a second, right? So we've already got the answers there. Actually, maybe I shouldn't have gone to this slide straight away, right? But consider the question: if someone is insincere, right? So there's a claim here that, in fact, let me just check out what the next slides are, because obviously we get here, right? Okay, fine. Let's go back here. This one, right? In terms of being an imposter, we're going to do this through deduction. By the way, let me just go back one step. There is a similar argument that the Christians make. There is a similar argument that the Christians make with regards to Jesus, with regards to Isa alayhi salam, saying that he was either bad, mad, or God. Okay, that he was either bad, as in he was a liar, or he was mad, he was deluded, or failing those two, he must be God. Very similar to this argument here, but what is the fundamental flaw, the big crux that is missing in that argument? There's a very, very significant fatal flaw there that they've overlooked. What do you guys reckon that is? Yeah, but that's not contained within the argument itself. I'm talking just from what I've mentioned. Obviously, someone else would claim that, but that's not within the premises. Bad, mad, or God. There's none of the above. Yeah, but there's something else specific that I mentioned it a couple of minutes ago. Actually, I mentioned it very, very specifically a couple of minutes ago. Jazakallah khairan. Brother Firdaus has got it. That in terms of this claim, Jesus never actively made the claim that he was the messenger of God. It's a claim that is superimposed upon him. Okay, so the fact that he's bad or mad, even if you deny those, you cannot therefore conclude that he must be the messenger of God, because again, there are other possibilities, and he never actively made the claim. Whereas the difference is with Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he actively made the claim of being a messenger of God. So therein is the difference. Right, okay. So the question to consider, we're going to go through, obviously, argument through elimination here. So we're going to eliminate, obviously, the imposter aspect, and then wherever we're left with, then by deductive reasoning, has to be the truth. Okay, so I want you to think about a question. Why do people lie? Okay, why do people lie? Actually, do you know what this is in the slides? I don't even know why this is even here. Why I went through this, put this here. I suspect maybe that was just for the printed notes. Okay. Could Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam have been a liar? Well, we have several different examples here from the Seerah. The fact that he was named the truthful one, the trustworthy one, to gain or to prevent from harm. Absolutely. Okay, so this is the big key one, right? The purpose of so let's just go through those examples. He was nicknamed the truthful one, As-Sadiq al-Amin, the truthful one, the trustworthy one. That was his nickname. That was the characteristic that he was known for. That even, when people were denying his claim of prophethood and messengership and whatever have you, they still realized that he was the one. If they had to go somewhere and they had valuables that they needed, safeguarding, whatever have you, still give them to him. So they would trust him with their wealth, with their belongings, with literally everything else, but just not in the single claim of being a messenger of God. There's a particular example as well from the revelation of Surah Al-Masad when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam went up onto the hill and he called the Quraysh together, and obviously they individually they sent leaders or representatives to go listen what's happening, and he said, listen, if I said that there was an army coming from around this hill, would you believe me? And they affirmed that we've never known you to speak a lie, not even to the point of an exaggeration or anything like that, or even in jest. He wasn't a joker in that sense, that where he would invent things, even for comedic value, or so they said, we've never known you to tell a lie, so yes, we would believe you because we've got no reason otherwise. And he said, that's when he basically proclaimed that I'm warning you of a punishment greater than this, which is when Abu Lahab then basically replied, what is this all you basically called us for, curse you? And that's when Surah Al-Lahab was revealed. But if you just a cursory examination of the seerah in and of itself reveals that there are so many different times and independent scenarios where his trustworthiness was affirmed. Okay. And not only that, let's also go back to this last point here. If he was a false prophet, there still needs to be some kind of an explanation for the Quran, right? Because at the end of the day, the Quran itself, affirms him as the messenger of God. So if he's a false prophet, if he's some kind of imposter, there still needs to be some kind of an explanation of the Quran. You can't just then, attribute the Quran and say, well, he invented it, because again, we discussed yesterday in the previous session that the Quran cannot be the work of man. So if the Quran is, cannot be denied to be the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how else are you going to be able to go there and say, no, I'm just going to deny this aspect that he's the messenger of God? Okay, so there still needs, regardless of the conclusion here, there still needs to be an explanation for the Quran. Okay, what if someone said your argument contains a false dichotomy, since there's another option, since Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't exist? How would you respond to that? Since he didn't exist, well, we have literally, mutawatir narrations. We have so many different narrations. We have lineage. We have history. We have so many different artifacts that proves that he actually exists. That it's not possible for the entirety of, the amount of civilization, the amount of people to have invented him as a person. Okay, it's just not possible. So yeah, if they want to say that he didn't exist, let them bring forth their proof and their evidence, which obviously they can't, because you can't prove a negative. But we have, more than abundance of evidence to demonstrate that, he did exist. So yeah, it's. I agree. It's a silly argument. Anyway, so the point being, right? Here's the big crux, though. So as Brother Firdaus mentioned as well, I think it was. No, actually, sorry, Abu Muhammad mentioned the purpose of lying. Why does someone lie? So you have to consider lying is not a default action, right? Unless you're a compulsive liar. But generally speaking, lying is not a default action. It's something that you learn to do. And it only really comes about if you want to gain some kind of an advantage that you are unable to gain from telling the truth. Okay? So normally people would just be quite truthful and straightforward, unless there was some kind of an advantage that they want to gain, which is also, prevention from harm. If they didn't want to be harmed, or that they would lie to escape the punishment, which again is some kind of a benefit. So you'd only basically lie if it benefited you in some way to do so, because telling the truth is not going to grant you that. So let's consider, and I've already given away the answer on the previous slide, but let's consider, what is it that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam could have possibly stood to gain? What is it that anyone could have stood to gain? And really, if you think about it, right, all of the answers, there's basically three main buckets that this argument or the possible conclusions come down to. Now, it's either for women, that he wanted to increase the women that he was married to and whatever have you, or there was wealth, he wanted to increase his riches and his comfort, or for status, power and recognition and authority among men. Okay, anything else that people say, if you say land is part of your wealth, whatever, everything else will fit somewhere into one of these three buckets. Okay, there really is, well, I say there really is, possibly there could be, I've just never heard of it. So if anyone has a fourth bucket, something that is completely distinct to any of these, that wouldn't fit in any of these, I'm all ears. Because you basically have one, which is the acquisition of women, from, I suppose you could say acquisition of men or children, but would you acquire them as slaves? Because that's then considered your wealth. because then you have the acquisition of other stuff, which is material things, which is your wealth, or the only other immaterial thing is your status. Anyway, so let's consider: is it possible that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam lied in order to gain women? Well, let's think about the state of the Arabs before Islam. The state of the Arabs was such that a man could have as many wives as he wanted. It was completely unrestricted, and he didn't have to offer them anything. He didn't have to offer them a mahar. He didn't have to offer them a bridal gift. He didn't have to look after them. He literally, women weren't even second-class citizens. They were third-class citizens, to the point where they were considered property that could even be inherited. When the father passed away, the sons would inherit the wives. So that was the nature of women then. People often will say that, oh, Islam you've allowed 4 wives and whatever have you, and they're looking from the perspective of the default being 1, and Islam increased it to 4. Well, actually, no, Islam reduced it from unlimited down to 4. That now you can only have 4 maximum, and even then, you've still got to be treating every single one equally. But the Quran also stresses that if you can't do justice between them, then stick to only one, marry only one. Okay, so the monogamy here is stressed. And now, when you want to marry a wife, a woman, you have to give them a bridal gift. It's obligatory. It's not a negotiable condition. Obviously, it's up to them if they want to give that up, but it's still not a negotiable thing. It's not up to you. It's not up to the guy. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Just hug like him for joining. We missed you yesterday, bro. What happened? Right. So, and now, rather than women being inherited, now they can, they're independent. They're independent persons. They can inherit themselves now. So they can inherit, if their husband passes away, rather than them being inherited by the children, they now inherit from their husband. So now they have more rights. They have rights that are equal to men. They have rights over their husbands as well. They can now make demands of their husbands. And again, on top of that, Islamic teachings prescribe modesty as well. So you have a look at, this big thing that's going on now in France, where they're trying to ban the hijab and whatever have you. Islam prescribes modesty, which, if you think about it, is a barrier for advancement, unwanted advancement from the men. Now, you think about it. If Rasulullah's whole idea and intention was that, oh, I want to get more women, well, hold on a second. Like, he already had access to all of that. He already had access to all of that. And not only that, but at the period of time in his life when you would expect for a man to be, the most, virile, where he wants to have more and more and more, which is, the young adult age. At that point in time, he went completely counter to society's norms and remained in a monogamous marriage to Khadija, may Allah be pleased with her, who was not only older than him, but also previously married and previously had children. So again, he only took on multiple wives after she had passed away, when he had reached the age of about 50-ish. Okay. So it was literally only in the last decade or so of his life that he had actually become polygamous. So this idea that Islam and everything that came before it was just set up in order for him to have multiple wives, it just carries no water. He had all of the access there available, and all of these steps make it more difficult to acquire women under the rules. Does that make sense? So, literally, in terms of being able to have this argument carry any degree of water, it can't carry any degree of water, because there are so many different separate points that basically go against this being a potential motive. Okay, so for anyone to be able to argue that, well, yes, he lied for women, I'm sorry, but where's the proof? There is no basis in which they can make and hold on to that argument. Okay. So what about lying for wealth? Well, we know that he was already wealthy from his marriage to Khadija radiallahu anha. So, just to give you an idea of her level of wealth, that the Makkans used to have their trade was to send caravans to to the north and south, and every household would send some goods of whatever have you to be traded with this caravan, and the amount or the size of or the amount of camels required just to carry the amount of things that Khadija, may Allah be pleased with her, wanted to sell or was involved in selling, her aspect of the caravan was equal to all of that of the middle class of the Quraysh put together. So she was extremely wealthy, and of course, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, had access to that because she granted him access, not because he had an automatic access. No, no, she was very forthcoming and generous with him because, in fact, actually, that was one of the characteristics as to why she married him. She had very many suitors trying to approach her for marriage because of her wealth and status, but she chose to marry Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam because of his honesty and dignity and fair trading, whatever have you. So she knew that he wasn't, he wasn't after her for her money, and in that regard, it's not something that she needed to withhold from him. She believed in him, she trusted him to spend the money in the goodness for the both of them. So he didn't need the wealth. This is the point. This wasn't a get rich quick scheme. He was already rich at this point. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And Islam prescribes charity, okay? And the specific thing about Islam is that it prescribes giving charity directly into the hands of the needy, because at the end of the day, the witness for your sadaqah, for your charity, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah can see and knows to whom you are giving charity. You don't need to give your charity to a central body who will then take a cut out of it and then distribute the rest or whatever have you and pay the salary and whatever have you. You don't need to do that. You can just give your charity directly to the needy person. So again, there's no rule here that in terms of you having to give up your wealth, but you have to give it to Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam or to his family or to any specific persons. No, you give it to whoever is needy from among your community or whatever have you. So again, the prescription for charity is there, but none of that is being directed in any way to Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And on top of that, then the wealth that came in, so many different examples of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam literally just giving it away to people, just giving it away to, spending it among the community. The Muslim Ummah at the time of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam wasn't in a situation where, the Bayt al-Mal, the house of the Muslims, the treasury was full, yet the people were starving. It wasn't like that. Literally, the money was being spent on the people to raise everyone to the same level of standard, or at least to a minimum level of standard. Okay. And there was even an occasion where wealth had come in, and which includes slaves as well, whatever. Slaves had come in, which were considered property as well. By the way, Islam, although it's Islam, this is a completely separate topic, but just in case, because obviously it's being live broadcast, that although Islam came and made lots of rules to diminish slavery, for freeing a slave, whatever have you, and put in processes where slavery would eventually become abolished and obsolete. The one route where it was still permissible to acquire is if people literally went to war against the Muslims. And so if you went and you deliberately fought the Muslims and you were captured, you basically became a slave. So you kind of entered yourself into that servitude there. So also prohibitions of interest demonstrate the motive wasn't wealth, because prohibition. Yeah, that's a good point as well. That there's prohibitions of interest as well, which again is for the rich to get richer. What about not lying, just being narcissistic? Um, how you're gonna have to expand that one for me. I'm not seeing how you could reconcile the two, because we're talking about here, like, literally specifically the claim of being a messenger. So it's got to be either willful deny, willful misleading there, or not. So how would narcissism play into that? Right. So so on this occasion, his daughter Fatima, may Allah be pleased with her, came to him and she wanted basically a slave to help out with housework and whatever have you, and he refused her. This is his his beloved daughter, one of the four who have women who have perfected their iman throughout womankind. She's got like ridiculously high status. She was the one who of his family who met him first after his passing. She was overjoyed with this. Like, she's the most beloved to him of his daughters, of his family, and he refused her. And he said, no, it's for it's for other people, the people who are needy. And instead he taught her a dua, instead, a supplication to make instead. So there was no point where he actually preferred his own family, in terms of these regards, like his own household. There is the narration from Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her, that even in his own household, that they only used to have, dates, for months, that they would only eat a couple of dates a day, literally for months. So there was no evidence, anything. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Long time no see. Jazakallah khair for joining us. Um, so again, you have literally multiple example after example after example in the seerah that at no point was there any attempt to acquire wealth for his own personal use, for his own personal satisfaction, where for his family, for his friends, whatever have you. Literally all of the wealth was spent on others, even to the point on his deathbed when he asked how much wealth he had, and that little bit of the coins that he had, he wanted them distributed in charity before he passed away. He died with literally next to nothing. It wasn't, it was never a life goal to become supremely rich or anything like that. The seerah itself, and so many different examples itself, completely negate all of this. Okay, but we were starting like every weekend at the same time, bro. But okay, fine. Sorry, I'm not the police. I won't say anything. Okay, all right. Alhamdulillah. Maybe which one? Because I actually restarted the stream because I had the wrong notification set up. But khair, anyway, whatever happened. Yeah, activate the notification bell. Exactly. Jazakallahu khairan. Okay. So maybe my brain is 2:30. All right. Jazakallahu khairan for stopping by as well, brother. For those, if you do go. Okay. So right. So lying for wealth, again, it's not supported anywhere, in terms of the sirah, what we know. Okay. So what about for status? Okay. What about for status? Which means that he wanted authority, power, privilege, whatever have you, over the people, right? Well, in terms of the Quraysh, there were 12 tribes of the Quraysh. So the Quraysh is made of 12 different sub-tribes. And Rasulullah SAW was from the Banu Hashim, which was already the elite of the Quraysh. It was already the elite. So he was already from the top, most prestigious tribe, if you want to call it that. And even then, whilst he wasn't the leader of the tribe, obviously he was a young man whilst a lot of this stuff was going on. There was an incident when the Kaaba was being rebuilt, right? So a flood occurred where the Kaaba got destroyed, and all of the Muslims, sorry, they weren't Muslims at the time. Islam hadn't been revealed at the time. Obviously Islam from Islam from Ibrahim alayhi salam's time, but obviously, uh, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam wasn't appointed a messenger at the time. This was when he was about 25. So this is about 15 years before the revelation began. Um, so the Makkans at the time got together to rebuild the Kaaba. Um, and when it came to putting the black stone in its place, then they had a fight and an argument as to who would have the authority or the privilege to be able to put the stone back in its place. But yeah, Jazakallah khair for those. He's got it. Yeah. um, who would have the authority to put it back in its place. So they actually almost came to blows, and this halted things for quite a while. So then they made an agreement that, okay, fine, whoever's next to enter in the courtyard, let's let them make the decision. Okay, and it just so happened to be Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala willed it to be that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam happened to be the one that entered up upon them. And at this, actually, they were all really, really happy because he had such a good relationship with every single one of them, with all of them, right? He had a good relationship with everyone that they actually thought that even though he's not from our tribe, obviously he was from the tribe of the Banu Hashim, that he'll pick us. That they actually each thought that they would be the ones that he would pick. Again, we have this narration as well from I've forgotten Sahabi's name again. Amr bin As. When he asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who does he love the most? He was expecting it to be himself, and then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam replied, Aisha, and then her father, and then Omar, etc. So again, they actually thought that he would pick them. So he came up with the solution, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that they would put down a cloth, put the stone on the cloth, and all of them would together raise it up. But he himself would be the one then to pick it up and to put it in its correct spot. And absolutely nobody had any issues with this. He was invited for the Pact of the Perfume, the Treaty of a Perfume, which is a very particular treaty that was made up between the Arabs to try and curb corruption among them because they were custodians of the Kaaba and they had been accused of being crooks, basically. Now, even though he wasn't an elder of the community at the time, his status was such that he was invited to become a part of this. So even from a young, early age, he was recognized to be someone of incredible importance within the community. Okay, now check this out. The beginning of the revelation, the beginning of prophethood. So we know the story that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was in the cave, contemplating by himself, and the angel Jibreel alayhi salam came to him and commanded him to read and squeezed him tight and commanded him to read, at which Rasulullah said that he couldn't read, yada yada yada. And after this incident, Rasulullah then basically fled from the cave, ran back home. Now, you know what happens, right? Actually, let me go back a sec. I don't know if you guys have ever been there, right? But this cave is situated, it's fairly high up a mountain. It even though there's stairs there now, it'll take you a good 20 minutes minimum, right? 20 minutes, possibly longer, just to go up those stairs. Now, you imagine trying to come back down those stairs as well. And bear in mind, this is sharp rock, it's very steep and whatever have you, okay? That you want to try and come down these stairs. And again, the Makkah itself is still a fair distance away. And by the time he gets home, he is shivering out of fear. You have that extreme fear when a sudden shock happens to you, your blood just runs cold. That, subhanAllah, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam felt this extreme fear and anxiety to that point that even after making it down the mountain and running all the way home, he's still shivering with cold, that he asked to be covered up. He asked to be covered up, right? And my point here being that if he invented this story, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, just for status and fame and power, especially in that tribal, community where the men of the power, you have to show strength and dominance. Why on earth would he start that story with, I was, scared and, I had to run home to my wife. I didn't go run to, my best friend Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, may Allah be pleased with him. I ran home to my wife and I basically hid under a blanket. From the perspective of if the story was invented, for his own greatness, that's a really, really, really bad way to begin that story, right? Which then makes you think, well, why? What, other than it obviously being the truth, why why would he have started the story like that? That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. Then we have Utbah ibn Rabi'ah's offer, which was, so this guy was the Islamophobe, very, very, very big Islamophobe, and he was a very eloquent speaker, apparently. So he was sent. This is after prophethood. This is after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam began to preach about Islam. That he was actually sent to speak to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam on behalf of the Quraysh, and he spoke to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in a very, very harsh and insulting manner, but still the Arabs would, they were a truthful society. That they didn't just arbitrarily go around telling lies. I'll tell you why they were truthful, because they had, they couldn't, there were no written contracts and things like that. Literally, your word was your bond, and if word had got out that your word couldn't be trusted, nobody was ever going to make any contracts or dealings with you. So for an illiterate society, your word is literally your bond, and you can't afford for anyone to accuse you individually or as a society of not being true to your word, because you need that to get by. So even though he was speaking to Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in a very insulting manner, he made the offer. They were genuine offers that, look, what do you want? If it's money you want, we'll give you wealth. If it's women, you can marry anyone you want. We'll give you status, we'll give you power. He literally offered Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam everything in a very, very insulting way. There was, you could kind of also interpret it as a way that with some degree of cynicism there. But again, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam refused. The Quraysh even offered at the time that they would make Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam the leader of the Quraysh. You can be the leader, exclusive leader for a year, and so long as after that you just bow down to our idols for a day. Now, think about this as well. Even from the objective of being a genuine messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, maybe it's possible that had he been the leader for a year, that shirk could have been eradicated as much as possible, that he wouldn't need to have fulfilled the other side of the bargain. But he didn't even want to do that. But imagine if he was an imposter. If he was an imposter, they're basically offering it to him on a golden plate, saying, look, we're going to make you our leader for a whole year. And he's saying, no, all you have to do is just bow down to our idols just for the one day. We'll make you our leader for a whole year. No, complete refusal. Like, if this is they offered him exactly what, status, everything, and he's refusing it. So how can anyone say, well, he did it all just to get power, when he was being offered it and it's being denied? Not only that, let's just think about as well, the Quran is being attributed to Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Nobody anywhere is attributing the Quran to any third party, right? So if he was doing it for wealth, for status and whatever have you, then why is his mention barely there in the Quran? The Quran is talking about other prophets, other messengers, way more than, there's like literally hundreds of mentions of Musa alayhi salam, of Ibrahim alayhi salam, dozens of Isa alayhi salam, Adam alayhi salam. There are so many different messengers that are, mentioned over and over and over again. And his mention is only what, 4 times, I believe. I'm sure I've actually got slides that are going into this in greater detail. It's been a while since I've done this. So again, the Quran itself, demonstrates that. How could he be coming up with the Quran again? The Quran, which requires an explanation, but there's no evidence in the basis of even the Quran that he brought that that it's there just singing his praises, that it's all about him, because his mention is very little. Not only that, there's also rebukes of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in the Quran as well. So let's just give the one example of what happened with Ibn Maktoum. So Ibn Maktoum was a blind individual. He was one of the, he becomes a very, very famous Sahaba, a very famous companion. But at this point in time, he's not yet a Muslim. So Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has spent a long time trying to get through and reach the leaders, the Jahil leaders, right? So you have Abu Jahl, etc., who wouldn't give him the time of day. But on this one occasion, they said, "Yeah, okay, fine, whatever. Tell us, what is it that you want to tell us?" So Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was given a very rare, specific, golden opportunity, if you want, to give them da'wah. And at that point in time, Ibn Maktoum turns up. Now, of course, Ibn Maktoum is blind. He can only hear the Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, so he approaches, and he doesn't know what's going on or who else is there. And he basically interrupts and basically says, "Ya Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, tell me about your religion." Okay, Jazakallah khairan, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So he says, to tell him about Islam. Now, at this point in time, the timing is really, really awkward. So what did Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam do? But he just frowned. Okay, now think about this, right? Do you think Abu Jahl really cared about Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam frowning? Was he offended by this? No, absolutely. He doesn't care, because, part of his thing was that, if Islam was true, Islam should only be for the rich and for the elite, and not for, the downtrodden and, the bottom rung of society, like Ibn Maktoum was. So he absolutely didn't care. Ibn Maktoum was blind. He didn't see it, right? Yet you have the surah in the Quran, Surah Al-Abasa, which admonishes Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam for just even frowning. I mean, not even saying anything, not even doing anything, just that look of annoyance, or that the awkwardness of the timing, however you want to call it. So the point being that there's admonishment there for Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Like, how could you explain that whilst at the same time declaring that, well, he came about with this in order to let people know about his own greatness. The two are contradictory. So you see, none of these work. Okay, so really there is no argument to be made, or to carry any water, that he Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam came up, was trying to gain any of these, because the seerah, the lifestyle, the teaching of Islam, everything literally demonstrates otherwise. So let's go through some ayat of the Quran as well, because some people will say, "Well, that's only hadith. Hadith can be fabricated or whatever have you." But let's have a look at the Quran. So you have here ayat in the Quran where Islam introduced an upper limit. Now this is the whole point. There's an upper limit. It wasn't, the default was to marry only one, and then Islam increased it to four. No, the default was marry as many as you want, and Islam restricted it to four. Okay, so it brought the limit down rather than raising it up. It's a very important point to bear that in mind. And again, it stressed that only one, marry only one. Where else does any theology stress that? Again, you have the obligation to offer to the your wife to be a bridal gift. That's their right. You can't escape that. As opposed to what other societies do, which is where they demand that the woman pays the guy a gift. That's completely contrary and counter to Islam. And again, the woman's wealth is completely hers. It's got nothing to do with the guy. Her wealth is hers, and your wealth is hers. The guy's wealth is hers as well. She has access to her husband's wealth. That women, under Islamic law, under Islamic principles, can expect it to be maintained by the men of the family. That they don't have to maintain any financial obligations whatsoever. That literally they are to be looked after by the men. So you have here also ayat of demonstrating that the women can inherit as well. And it's important, all of this is in the Quran. So it's not a case of like we can dispute this now, because now if somebody wants to come along and dispute and say, oh, these were injected or whatever have you, or again the work of man, then you just fall back to the proof of the Quran. Well, if this was why couldn't someone else have changed this? Somebody else could have very easily changed this afterwards if this was the words of man. Why was the whole of Arabian society bent on preserving this if they didn't believe in it and they had the ability and opportunity to change it? It makes no sense. Okay. Again, further ayat, Islam is giving women equality with the men. You have introducing women's rights over the husband, so now they can demand things from the husband. They can, they can demand their husbands be with them at night. They can demand, to be maintained to a standard that's similar and equal to other women in society, whatever have you. The prescription there for modesty to cover up, so that they can. So at least lustful behavior is at least curbed a little bit or whatever have you. But and they're not everything's not on show, whatever have you. Okay. So again, we've already gone through all of this. So yeah, we already explained that she was older than him. He went against society. He remained to her monogamously for approximately 28 until her passed away, 30 years after the advent of Islam. He also offered any women, yeah, and recited Surah Al-Fasla and brought Islam to gain women. So yeah, this is basically what we've just went through. It makes absolutely no sense to argue that he was lying to gain women. So we already went through this as well, lying to gain wealth, that she was already very wealthy, so he had the wealth from Khadija radiallahu anha. Oh yeah, this was another point that I forgot to mention this, that when Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was running from the cave of Hira to her, and he felt that he was being crazy. Actually, no, it wasn't on this occasion. Was it on this occasion? Or was it on the subsequent occasion? But on one of the two occasions, it was the first or the second revelation. I forget which one now. That she mentioned to him that I think it was on the second occasion actually, because that's when I think he felt like there was something going on. that she consoled him by saying that his Lord, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will never leave him. By Allah will never disgrace you as you keep good relations with your kith and kin, speak the truth, help the poor and the destitute, and serve your guests generously, and assist the deserving calamity afflicted ones. This is an evidence from her that he's spending wealth, in the path of charity and sadaqah. Again, other examples here, other different hadith here. These are from Sahih Muslim, where Umar bin Khattab is narrating that he saw an incident where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had separated from his wives for a period of time, and he was sleeping on a straw mat, and he Umar bin Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, was pained that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was subjecting himself to very, very harsh conditions, at which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's position is that at the end of the day we're going to get Jannah, bro. That's it. Jannah that's the end goal. Forget the pleasures and the softness and the comforts of this world. Jannah is where it's at. So again, this whole idea of lying to gain wealth, his lifestyle literally does not support this argument whatsoever. Again, here we have the ayat from the Quran show that explain and expose that even with the war booty that was coming in, that was given to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as okay. What if someone said that he claimed prophethood to reform society? Okay, we'll come to that. Okay, good. Jazakallah khair. Right. They ask you, that the Beit al-Mal, it's still being distributed away. Okay, it was still being for Allah is only 1/5 of it. Only 1/5 is kept, and 4/5 are being distributed away. And even that 1/5 that's being kept, it's for the messenger, his near relatives, because at the end of the day, he has to eat, he has to be able to live somehow. What do you want? The messenger of God to have a job, or do you want him to be, looking after society, and the orphans, the needy, whatever have you. So this is like 1/5 of the booty is for all of this. The 4/5 go to whoever were the ones that won it. Okay, I don't know why that's happening. That just happened. It just dropped out again, and it's come back again. And I wonder if it's the same time every day. If there's something unusual going on, because that never used to happen before. But okay, alhamdulillah, it seems like we're back. What if someone said he claimed prophethood to reform society? Where's the link? Where's the link? He could have, yeah. No, my bandwidth just dropped then for a second. I don't know why. It just dropped right down, so it's come back up. So if you hit refresh, it should just catch you up. But I don't know why that happened, because it did the same yesterday, and it's never done that before. So there's something either going on with my ISP, or maybe some configuration or something like that has changed. I don't know. But yeah, if you claim prophethood to reform society, okay, fine. How does that work? Why does he need to claim prophethood to be able to reform society? Again, that would still come down to having some degree of status and influence, because the only way to reform society would be to claim the authority, to be able to do so. Which again, it comes down to authority. No, it's something here. I don't know why that was. Okay, does that make sense, Abu Muhammad? To reform society is still part of status, and again, they would need to explain and expand, like, how does that work? He promotes charity, good manners, prohibits evil, but you don't need to claim messengership for that. You can just promote that anyway. There's been many philosophers of the past that promote changes in society. You don't need to claim to be a messenger of God literally just for that. You don't need to claim that there's something special about you specifically if all you're doing is just preaching about good morals. Okay, so lying to gain wealth again. So yeah, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was involved in paying off the debts of the Muslims. We have these narrations in Sahih Bukhari, both of them. So yeah, two different narrations that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was basically taking it upon himself to make sure that the Muslim believers' debts, etc., were paid. Okay. By the way, you're going to have all of these slides as well in the notes as well. So don't worry about remembering all of this and noting it all down. Lying to gain wealth. Okay, so you have examples here. Mu'adh ibn Jabal narrated that he used to ride with Rasulullah on the back of a donkey, not even like a pony or a horse or anything like that. Literally a donkey, and not even their own donkeys, but they used to share a single donkey. Like, in terms of riding animal, like how much lower could you possibly go? Where like Rasulullah, if he wanted a horse or a camel and things like that, people would have brought him, whole herds of them. But he's riding a donkey and with a passenger. Like think about that. So where is this thing of trying to gain wealth? This is when he's the messenger of Allah, and he has the wealth available to him. When the trench was being dug, this is for the Battle of Khandaq, the companions, out of hunger, they were hungry as well, used to tie a stone around their stomachs to stay of hunger, and Rasulullah SAW showed them that he had actually tied too, that he was, he was going through suffering and things like that, just as much, at least as they were. And we mentioned the hadith as well of narration that we didn't light the fire for months in our homes. We sustained ourselves on dates and water. So we went through all of these examples. Oh, this is another good one, right? As well, when Bedouins used to enter the masjid, right, they would ask, which of you is Muhammad? Now think about this. Does anyone ever enter into the king's court and ask which of you is the king? Right? It's obvious who the king is. The king is the one sitting, high up, dead center with the fancy clothes and the big, massive chair. Think about it, right? So for anyone to be entering upon a gathering and say, well, which one is Muhammad, implies and shows that they couldn't tell. Like it wasn't obvious just from observation which one was Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which meant that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, at least as far as possible, made himself at the same as everybody else. He's sitting on the same level as everybody else. He's wearing the same types of clothing as everybody else. Obviously, his appearance and whatever have you, he's the messenger of Allah, and the beauty and and all of the other characteristics are far, greater than what anybody else had. But in terms of just the general appearance and the way he's carrying himself, he's not wearing gold and silk robes and whatever. He's literally wearing the same as what everybody else is wearing. Okay. All of these arguments are predicated on the fact that Islamic sources are authentic and free from the bias. Not all of them. Maybe you could argue the hadith ones are, but we also have the chain of isnad. And you could argue. So we have also multiple examples in the Quran. And also we have obviously the narrations, which we have our chains of isnad, which is basically that we know who narrated this, that we have some way to authenticate where these narrations came from. So if somebody wants to say that, oh, well, the narrations are false, then again, let them bring forth the evidence. These narrations were authenticated way back in the day, at the time, within a few generations by, Muslim, by Bukhari and Muslim. So for the Sahih ones, right? So if again, remember the lesson on argumentation. Your premises only need to be more plausibly true than the negation, and we've got the evidences, we've got the sciences, we've got the backing to show that no, all of the evidence points to the fact that these narrations are. There's more evidence to show that these narrations are more authentic, particularly the Sahih ones. So the narrations I'm giving you are from Sahih, are more authentic than the negation. So let anyone who wants to challenge this bring forth their evidence. They don't have any. Okay, so like I said, the Quran there over 150 references to giving charity without accounting, which is basically give it directly to the people. Don't give it to a person, a particular person, or a particular institution, or whatever have you. Give it directly to the needing people. Okay, so again, so many an abundance of evidences to show that he couldn't have been lying, or he wasn't lying basically to gain money, because A, he didn't need it, and B, the money wasn't being directed towards him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the last one, lying for authority and prestige, well, again, we already discussed this, was already on from the nobility and held in high esteem by the Quraysh. Treaty of the Perfume, we discussed this already. First reactions upon reading the revelation was fear, doubt, and despair. We also discussed this. Victimless incident. And again, yeah, we mentioned all of this stuff. The least mention of the Anbiya mentioned in the Quran, he's mentioned only 5 times in total. Okay, whereas you have all of these other Anbiya who are mentioned far more than he is. Do you see? Okay, so there's no basis in which anyone's going to be able to create and maintain an argument that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was lying for status, because literally all of the evidence contradicts this. Okay, so now we know that he's not impostor. He wasn't insincere, which then basically means that, well, if he wasn't insincere but he wasn't impostor, then he must have been mad. He must have been deluded. So let's explore this possibility, right? Could he have been deluded? Okay, so let's have a look at some claims from historians, right? So rather than, some random Tom, Dick, and Harry just coming up with a random claim just to fulfill their wishful desires, let's have a look at what people who have actually studied the history, who are adept at studying history, what they concluded. Okay, so we have here Michael Hart, who is a white separatist. He is, I wouldn't go as far as to call him, well, okay, hang on. He organized a conference in Baltimore entitled Preserving Western Civilization. Billed is addressing the need to defend America's Judeo-Christian heritage and European identity from immigrants, Muslims, and African Americans. Okay, so you could probably call him an Islamophobe, but the point being that his position, his political outlook and whatnot is not favorable to Islam, at the least, right? He is not a fan of the Muslims. However, he wrote a book which had there were two different editions of it, called the 100, a ranking of the most influential persons in history, and the number one individual for both editions of the book was Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he states that my choice of Muhammad to lead the list of the world's most influential persons may surprise some readers and may be questioned by others, but he was the only man, not one of the men, not the best one, the only one in history who was supremely successful on both the religious and the secular levels. And actually, remember what I was saying before, that there is another argument better. It's actually based on this whole statement to show all the qualities of leadership in both regards, and to show that how Rasulullah SAW was the only one who ever managed to hit all of the characteristics. Nobody else even came close. So in that regard, first place goes to Muhammad SAW. There is no second place. Nobody else even finished. Okay, so the point here being that Michael Hart, who is again not a fan of the Muslims, states Muhammad SAW is, the most influential person in history. By the way, and bear in mind why we're going through this. We're going through this just to demonstrate that all of this, could this have been the result of madness, of delusion from a mind that wasn't aware of what was going on? I mean, you have a look at there's this long, description of Alfonso Martin, where he's explaining the characteristics and the things like that. Christine, what was that in response to? He's explaining, the characteristic, the attributes, and everything like that of Rasulullah, giving him great praise. How on earth, for someone who's recognized this, how could this be attributed to someone who was deluded or mad? William Montgomery Mott, who is a professor in Arabic and Islamic studies at the University of Edinburgh, basically states that to suppose, and this is my favorite part, to suppose Muhammad SAW an imposter raises more problems than it solves. It's like, look, remember Occam's razor. Here's the thing, remember Occam's razor. The simplest explanation is the closest one to the truth. That if someone wants to now come up with a counter explanation, right, that no, he wasn't the messenger of God, now you've got a problem. Well, okay, fine. If you're saying that he wasn't a true messenger of God, he was an imposter, then was he lying or was he deluded? Because these two things are mutually exclusive. They're mutually exclusive, and the people who say that he was imposter cannot agree between themselves. Well, which one was it? And even then, the ones that say, well, he was lying, cannot agree on, well, why was he lying? Because again, there's no evidence to support it other than wishful thinking, which is not an evidence actually. Okay, Reverend Bosworth, again, that he was Caesar and Pope in one. Again, all of these historians are in high praise. You're going to have all of this on the slides as well, in the notes as well when the video goes up. In high praise of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which means that there is absolutely no way for anyone to argue that, oh well, he must have been deluded. And literally, the legacy left behind was the product of a deluded mind, especially when you compare with the legacies or the rulings or the leadership of people, you know, in the last several centuries, if you want, who are not deluded, who had the full availability of their faculties and whatever have you. That the leadership of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has dwarfed this. That look at the following that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has and maintains, and it keeps growing. It keeps growing. Normally, when people and political movements and things like that, when they pass away, their movement dies with them, so to speak. But the movement that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam started, which was only in the hundreds of thousands at most, is now not only in the millions or the tens of millions, but it's literally in the billions. Like this is just growing. Like there's been nothing else that's grown like this in the same way. So again, you have multiple different quotes. By the way, these are all, I've researched and I've authenticated all of these. One point to mention with these quotes, right? There is a very famous quote going around by George Bernard Shaw that culminates with him saying that, Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam would be the leader of the world or whatever have you. This quote is fake. It's often repeated, but it's completely fake. It doesn't exist. Okay, I've done the research in this. It doesn't exist, even though that there is a source attributed to it, which is a magazine, where there is an interview there with him, but he makes no such statement like this at all. So that quote is completely batil, completely fake. Stop sharing it. It's not true. Okay, these ones I've personally, every single one of these I personally vouched and verified, and for myself. Okay, so again, multiple different. This is what the historians basically say. There's too many different examples. What about in terms of his teachings? How could you say he was deluded when this is what he was teaching us about? He was teaching us that the best of the people are those who have excellent character, fulfilling the rights, paying off their debts, that live long and excel in their deeds, who feed others and return their greetings, who are best to their wives. You know, free, the best of Muslim is he who from whose hand and tongue the Muslims are safe. Compare that with the leadership now, where they're just corruption, they just sling mud and dirt at each other or whatever have you. There's a complete dichotomy. So how can you say Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was deluded and mad, and just that's how this claim came about. The best of deeds are the best of marriage are the easiest ones. The best most beloved of deeds is prayer in its right time. The most beloved of people, according to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is he who brings the most benefit, and most beloved of deeds is that you bring happiness to a fellow Muslim. I mean, where is the craziness in this? Where is the delusion in this? What's wrong with this teaching? Let someone, like, this is what was being preached. This is the message. This is the essence of Islam. This is what's being taught. Where is the delusion here? If someone wants to come about and say, Rasulullah was delusional, how are you making that claim? On what is the basis? What is your yardstick? How are you measuring this? Let us know what the criteria is so that we can challenge this. There's no objectively verifiable criteria given. So based on all of the evidence available before us, there is absolutely no basis in which to argue that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was deluded or mad or had any kind of a mental deficiency, subhanAllah, which means that he can't have been an imposter, because again, there was no motive to be an imposter, and there's no other explanation for his being an imposter, which means he cannot have been an imposter. The evidence literally doesn't support it. So if the evidence doesn't support for Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam to be an imposter, the only remaining conclusion, which has to be the closest to the truth, is that he was truthful in his claim. Now, I've got a couple of exercises as well, which used to be part of this, but I was going to split it out into a separate section on the Sharia as well, right? So let's just think about the Sharia, that this is the model that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam brought. This, in terms of a legal framework. Again, it's the legal framework that has stood the test of time, and it makes the most sense. It's the most just of all of the different frameworks that exist. So you have a look, like, it gives purpose in life, rather than preaching that, you have no purpose, you just exist, you are born, you work, you eat, you sleep, and then you die. Islam gives you a purpose in life, which leads to less depression and anxiety. Because in the Western countries, you have a ridiculous amount of people. I think at one study put it at over 25% of people are depressed. That, you have a huge amount of society that rely on antidepressants. They need to be made happy artificially because the society teaches them. I mean, I think it was in Scandinavia actually that, which is a heavily atheistic culture, where even though they have, in terms of material benefits and things like that, their standard of living is fairly high. Their rate of suicide is as well because people just have nothing to live for. Like, why do they're just existing? They just exist. They, almost like the regular rinse and repeat: go to work, get some money, eat some food, sleep, die. Like literally, there must be something more to life, but the society won't even allow that discussion to happen. What if someone says he was inspired by the devil? Okay, let them prove the devil exists. Let them prove the devil exists. What if someone says he was a genius who came up with all of these teachings? Fine, then he was a genius. Why wouldn't you follow him? He knows more than anybody else does. Why wouldn't you listen to him? Why are you only just going to listen on one thing and just say, okay, he's a genius in this regard, and then disregard him in anything else? It makes no sense. So if you regard him as someone who knows what he's talking about, follow him. And again, here's the other thing. At no point did he attribute all of this stuff to himself, right? He didn't attribute like, oh well, I'm coming up with this on my own genius. He basically claimed that I'm being inspired with this. So there was no ego there. There was nothing to say, hey, listen, it's all about me. I'm I'm coming up with this, of my own accord. No, it's like I'm being inspired. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching me and telling me to tell you guys. Okay? But he was not a prophet. Well, yeah, again, that the two things are non sequitur. That fine, he may have been a genius to come up with all of the things, right? Fine, okay, but what was he calling to? He was literally calling to the fact that he was a messenger of God, and you need to worship Allah. I don't, it makes no sense to me, like how one can claim one, but then just deny the other aspect of the claim. Anyway, so just going through this, we created Rasulullah Sallallahu created a God-fearing, self-reproaching society. So what does this mean? So like in a society now, you have people who are very willing to deny other people their rights because from their perspective they're never going to be held accountable to it. Shopkeepers will shortchange you. Businesses will, something breaks down, they won't honor the warranty. That there's basically corruption all around in a society that doesn't believe that anyone will ultimately be held accountable. Whereas what Rasulullah SAW introduced was a society that, feared Allah and could reproach themselves. So, the people were actively eager to make sure that, you weren't being wronged. That everybody's rights were being fulfilled, nobody's rights were being trampled or whatever have you, which then only just increases the satisfaction level of society as a whole. This is what was created by Rasulullah, and this is what the Western world is trying to destroy because, oh, okay, no, just stop believing in God, and not realizing or not caring that everything else slips away with that. Alcohol prohibition leads to benefits for society all around. Yeah, Islamic financial model prevents issues like the world financial crisis from occurring. The system of zakat. I've got a video to play on the system of zakat, which will be the final slide here. Marriage is strongly encouraged and facilitated, leading to stable families free from STDs, as opposed to the promiscuity that is being promoted and celebrated, particularly in the Western world, along with the problems that it then comes. Here's another unique one as well. The minorities can follow their own laws so long as it doesn't impinge on others. So look, if you've got a different rule set that you want to abide by, so long as it doesn't cause any external harm, yalla, bismillah, go for it. That's fine upon you. It solved slavery. So again, the Muslims were freeing slaves, and centuries thereafter, the Western world came along and they were started, creating slaves, and then they want to blame Islam for this. Like slavery existed before Islam came about. Islam put in steps to eliminate slavery, to make the freeing of a slave an expiation. Whereas other societies were still hell bent on keeping it, and also solved racism as well. Every single person is equal, like the teeth of a comb. Like the very famous statement of Rasulullah in his farewell sermon. Hajj sermon, that the white is not superior to the black, and the black is not superior to the white, and the Arab is not superior to the non-Arab, and vice versa. Everyone's equal. We have the salah 5 times a day where you're supposed to line up. It doesn't matter who you're next to, you line up shoulder to shoulder with whoever you're next to. You could be next to a white person, a black person, any other person, rich, poor, king, beggar, pauper, whatever have you. Everyone is equal in salah, in prayer, before their Lord. Okay? And zakat is dynamic affair. I'm not going to explain all of this. I'm actually going to play a video for you guys, so you can watch this video, inshallah, which is an excellent video.
Tax is one of the main ways for a government to raise funds, but tax can be very tough on the less well off. Zakat is a more dynamic and fairer way than income tax to raise government funds without harming the less wealthy. Now, to demonstrate this, let's have brother Adam and brother Yusuf, and let's give them both 30k a year. Now, brother Adam, he is a family man, wife and 2 kids, lives in a beautiful 2-bedroom house. And brother Yusuf, he's a single brother who lives in a 1-bedroom apartment, and mashallah likes to go on a holiday a couple of times a year. Now, how does tax affect both these brothers? Well, as they both earn the same amount, they'll both pay the same amount of tax. 7.5k is taken a year from each of their incomes. So how does this affect each brother? Well, brother Yusuf has a single lifestyle and therefore smaller expenses, like a 1-bedroom flat, so he will still have plenty of money left over after expenses and can easily afford the 7.5k in tax, and still go on holiday twice a year, so mashallah, he's good and sorted. But brother Adam, on the other hand, he's a family man and has much bigger expenses like rent, basic utility bills, childcare, travel, so he's got to manage his expenses very tightly, and on top of that, he's paying 7.5k a year in tax. So he has very little money left over at the end of each month. Now let's just chuck in brother Omar. Now, Omar doesn't actually work, but he's the son of a wealthy billionaire and has close to 1 million in his own account. So he enjoys the lavish lifestyle, flashy car, big mansion, private yacht. But how much tax would Omar actually pay? Well, because Omar isn't actually working, he pays zero income tax, despite owning insanely huge amounts of disposable wealth. Now, something about this picture doesn't seem very fair. The Western style income tax doesn't really help those who need it, and it doesn't really tax those who can easily afford it. There has to be a better way. Zakat is a 2.5% tax, but the tax isn't on your income. The tax is on your surplus wealth, the money you have left over after your expenses. So what does this mean for our 3 brothers? Starting with Yusuf, Yusuf will pay 2.5% on his surplus wealth. Now, a 2.5% tax isn't really going to stop him going on a holiday, but he will make a reasonable tax contribution. Brother Adam, on the other hand, he still has many expenses and will have little left over at the end of each month. Therefore, he doesn't really have any surplus. So Brother Adam will pay no tax, and that will allow him to use a full 30k from his income to support his family. MashaAllah. And what about Brother Omar? Well, Brother Omar has huge amounts of disposable wealth, and while losing 2.5% of that wealth to tax isn't really going to put a dent in his lifestyle, the amount he pays in tax would really help the rest of society. The more wealth he accumulates over time, the more tax he pays. If Omar had 1 billion in surplus wealth, he would pay 25 million in tax. Alhamdulillah. And that's why zakat is dynamically fair. Jazakallah khair for listening. If you enjoyed the video, please share it. And assalamu alaikum.
See, one thing. Oh, by the way, Jazakallah khairan, A8503 for following. See, one of the other things that makes this zakat system quite fair as well and workable is the fact that because you have the family man who's basically looking after his family, they're less likely now to need welfare from the state and whatever have you, which basically saves the state money. You see, so rather than taking from one, in one hand saying, right, give us money, and then just giving it back saying, oh, okay, you need support, they're just keeping it with him in the first place, which saves bureaucracy, paperwork, and whatever have you. And even the idea of you might have individuals that be like, well, I don't want to pay tax anyway because I'm just losing the money. Why don't I just go out and spend it? Fine, Bismillah, go out and spend it, because the more you go out and spend your money, and the less you're going to pay tax. But you're injecting that money into society, which you're going out to restaurants and businesses and whatever have you, and their businesses starts to boom, and they can start employing people and whatever have you. And it just basically lubricates society to start moving. Money is there as a lubricant. It's not there supposed to be stored or whatever have you. It's supposed to start things moving, to allow people to work, and trade, and become self sustaining, and to allow them to work, and generate a lifestyle from their ability to work. When money starts becoming hoarded, that's when it's a problem. So again, zakat, it's very simple, but it works. So how is it that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is coming up with all of this stuff? No other world leaders are coming up with anything comparable, and yet he's the one being labeled that, oh, no, 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 he obviously doesn't know what he's talking about. It absolutely makes zero sense whatsoever. So on that basis, being as it's I haven't got a slide here actually for the deductive argument, but basically you could argue that there's two separate arguments here, right? Which is that first premise is that in the claim that Rasulullah was truthful, or well, first of all, Rasulullah made the claim of being a messenger of God, which is easy to evidence. He was either truthful or lying in this claim. If he was lying, then he was lying either for personal gain, for he knew about it and it was for personal gain, or he didn't know about it. Both of those can be debunked. Therefore, we know he's not lying, which basically means the conclusion is that he must be truthful when he claimed to be the messenger of God. Does that make sense? I hope that all makes sense. I'm getting really I don't know why today. Today I've had a busy day early this morning. So yeah, I'm hoping that makes sense. That brings us to the end of this section, inshallah, on Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Next time we'll be discussing basically dawah mode, how to engage in the conversations and answer some basic questions and things like that. But yeah, are there any other further questions on this particular topic? Because if not, then we could call it a day. So I'll give you guys a second. When are we getting new emotes? To be honest, bro, you are my one and only legitimate subscriber. So I never actually bothered to look into it because I had no subscribers to offer them to. But if you mention it, I have no idea, bro. I've never looked into it. If, I'm if you wanna advise me, I'm all ears. Allahu alam. I need to think about it. Well, I need to think about what to offer as emotes as well. So yeah, you're gonna have to advise me, inshallah. Cool. Okay, so I think there are no further questions. So we will see you next week at the same time, inshallah. Jazakallahu khairan. Yeah. Just let me know, man. Just drop me a message or something. Okay? Cool. Jazakallahu khairan. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. And again, please do, I'll put the YouTube link up. It'll be on Facebook or on Twitter. Please do share the link. Please do encourage others to watch. And inshallah also to join again next week. Jazakallah khairan. And I will see you then. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.